the whole legal team left the trial saying it couldn't have gone any better. And the Court of Appeal previously, when we'd appealed this case before, because we've had to appeal it before, had said that this trial judge was going to define the meaning of the word racist, which is a crucially important word to know what it means. And the judge has dodged that bullet by saying that I have suffered no serious harm. And the problem I'm struggling with at the moment is how can I not have, I'm not, how, it's really difficult to explain it. How can an undefined term not be defamatory? Do you know what I mean? So she talks a lot in her judgment about racism, but she doesn't define what racism is. So I find that very, very peculiar.
And she made it very clear that the judge, Mrs. Justice Collins Rice, made it clear that she was not going to define that. And basically, you can't be harmed by it. I've not defined it. But it's, of course, you and I both know what we think a racist is. If someone says someone is a racist, I mean, I think the vast majority of people watching and listening to this would know what a racist is. And when someone calls someone a racist, and you and I have both been called racist many a time by people who don't know us, interestingly, not by anyone who knows us. So when someone uses that term, what they mean is, you know, you think that you're superior to people of a different ethnicity, that you go out of your way to do wrong to those people, think less of people who have a different ethnicity from you. I've seen you in your personal life as well as seen you in your public life. I've read all your tweets. I don't believe that you are a racist. And yet it appears to me that the ruling this week suggests that while it's not okay to call people paedophiles who are not paedophiles, and I would agree with the court on that, and I think you would agree with the court on that, it's also not okay for people to go around calling people racist when they can't prove or have any evidence that someone is.
Oh, yeah, and indeed, I prejudiced my own case by saying that I think it's absolutely fine for someone to hold an opinion that somebody is a racist. So I actually said to the judge that I thought it was okay that the two men held that opinion. What Nicola Thorp did with her language was to create a sentence which, when anyone who hires Laurence Fox does so in the knowledge that he's unequivocally, unashamedly, and publicly a racist, to me, as someone who studied language and made a living out of it, that sounds like a statement of fact. So if someone has stated a fact in that way, that would seem to be defamatory. And therefore, you know, we would have to get to the bottom of defining what that word means. And she hasn't done that she sidestepped that by saying I suffered no serious harm. So what we're left with in this country, and anyone who's observed my passage through this very torturous field, is that losing your entire livelihood isn't serious harm.
You weren't meaning to say, I think you are paedophiles. Your point was, look, these are terrible words to bandy about without any evidence, with any good cause. You're calling me racist. Well, what can I call you? I'm going to call you paedophile. Now, look, I've said this to your face. You know, I think this was cat-candid. I thought it was bad. You could have said, what if I called you? There's ways you could have written that. You wouldn't have got yourself into trouble and wouldn't have led to some people claiming the suggestion. I mean, I don't think anybody actually thought that's what you were calling these men and that's what you believed. But, you know, you do have a habit of kind of, lots of people will say, oh, he seems like a nice bloke, but he doesn't half put his foot in it, you know, gets himself sacked from GB News for talking about a woman and how he would or he wouldn't, you know, Ava Santini. I mean, you know, you do have a habit of this. There are things like the tweets you put out, like, you know, I didn't like all the pride flags in Regent Street, which lots of people were comparing to a Nuremberg rally in terms of the number of pride flags. You took those flags, you formed them into a swastika. Now, I didn't like that. I don't think a lot of people like that. I know the point you were making, I get it, but do you think sometimes that you are your own worst enemy?
I think we're all our own worst enemy, aren't we, to a degree? But no, because I've studied this movement very carefully, as lots of us have, and it's incredibly sinister what it's trying to do. And in terms of, you know, stuff like the pride flag on Regent Street, it just proved my point for me, which is this is a flag, the new global progressive flag, which you cannot criticize. And if you do, you will suffer extreme consequences for doing so. So in a way, the only other flag in the world that you weren't allowed to criticize in that way was the Nazi flag. So I sort of proved my point. I suppose what I do is I assume people are perhaps not going to take the worst possible faith reading of what I say, and that people understand. I mean, my audience understand what I'm talking about.
Your audience do, and I understood precisely when I saw that tweet what your point was. But you know perfectly well that that an awful lot of people aren't going to take it like that. And they are going to think, hey, I mean, here's a man, he's putting out a swastika made up of pride flags. What are we supposed to think of him? It's a simplistic world out there. People are going to interpret this without thinking. We know, hey, no one under 30 has got a sense of humour anymore, or understands nuance like that. We know that. People are very literal now. They don't like phrase. The woke movement don't like a phrase because it contains a word that they don't like. They don't understand. Don't go for the meaning of the phrase. You know that, but you do it anyway. Some people would say, you walk yourselves into these things, you want to create the controversy, and now it's come back to bite you harder than you expected. What do you say to that?
I'd say that inflammatory isn't defamatory.
I want to go back to where that all started, because you were an actor. We saw you on the telly. You were famous as an actor. You were doing very, very well as an actor. And then you went on Question Time in early 2020. Everyone remember back to those days. And you said something which I'm fascinated looking up the copy this morning. It's constantly referred to as your controversial remarks on Question Time. Your controversial remarks were in a debate about racism and Meghan Markle. And an audience member basically said, well, you're a white privileged male. And you had said, you think this is the most tolerant country in Europe. We're not a racist country, most tolerant country in Europe. But she said, you were a white privileged male. And you said, well, basically, you're treating me for an immutable characteristic of my colour. And I think that you're racist for saying that. Now, it was quite clear an awful lot of the Question Time audience agreed with you. And I would think the vast majority of the country agreed with you. But suddenly, you were persona non grata, weren't you, as a result of those so-called controversial comments?
Well, I think progressivism, which is taking over our country, and in all the very horrible forms that it is, it's a requirement of progressivism to push through its agenda that the entire population of that country have to be systemically racist. And what irritates me is it's not true, both quantitatively and statistically. It's just not true. So I did take umbrage with these words, white privilege. And actually, throughout the trial, I was saying anytime you swap the word white for black and it sounds wrong, it's wrong. So we don't talk about black privilege or black fragility or black tears. We don't do that. And what the modern progressive movement means now, that who's going to criticize, who's going to be able to say anything about the fact that our population is going to increase by 10 million in the next few years, and 6 million of that is going to be immigration. We're not allowed to say anything about it. It's immigration is good. If you don't like it, you're a racist. If you don't agree, and this word racist itself has now become extinct in the British language, which is a real shame. I mean, it's great for racists, but it's not good for, yes, for us in the population.
And that's the interesting thing, isn't it? When the word racist, when the R word is just bandied about to the extent that a judge thinks it's not even defamatory, and when it can be used just against people who, for instance, say, is it a good idea to import 10 million more people to the country? Or even just because they voted for Brexit. I've been called a racist simply for voting for Brexit. As I'm sure you've had it's slung at you many times. That what word do you use when you are talking about people who have the hideous, genuine racist views, who do think that black or Asian people are somehow less than them, or that they should discriminate against them, or worse, even show violence towards them? We don't have any words left in our language if we use up words like racist on people who we just simply disagree with.
No, I did make this point as well to the judge. I said there is a definition of the word racism in the Oxford English Dictionary, which is pretty concise. There is within the judiciary a thing called the Equal Treatment Bench Book, which is guidance for judges. And the definition of racism in the Equal Treatment Bench Book makes every single white-skinned person in this country a racist.
In what way?
So we're because it's the woke definition. It's about not only skin color, it's about power, about superiority. Right. It's a very woke definition. And all the people I've spoken to this morning and who have phoned to check in on me have made the same point, which is essentially if you have a certain political bent in this country, someone can walk up to you, punch you in the face, and you can do absolutely nothing to defend yourself at all. You just have to take it. You're
Yeah.
a racist. Okay, I have to take it. And what's going to happen is there's going to be a lot of discord. You know, I'm trying to do this. You often say I'm far too bullish in the way I do things, but I do this because I can see how serious the problem is and the pace at which it's gathering. We're going to not be able to say anything